About a month ago, I went to Harbor Freight and picked up one of their Chicago Electric Flux 125 welders. It's basically the same welder as the 90 amp, but they've repackaged it into 125 amp. And most people say that they're completely identical, but a couple things off the bat that I've noticed is that on the 90, it seems that there is no break in the circuit if you've got your metal grounded with the clip and you touch the welding wire to it, it would try to weld whether you're pulling the trigger or not. But on this Flux 125, you can touch the wire, the tip, you can touch any of it to the metal that you've got your ground clamp attached to, and it will not spark until you've pulled the trigger. So that's a good additional feature. In this one, I've already went through the spool of 030 wire that comes with it from Harbor Freight, and I just picked up some Lincoln wire, another 030 coil. So I just put that in today, and I wanted to give a little bit of a example of the type of welds that this thing will give. I'm not an experienced welder. I just started with this welding machine. So I've got a couple examples of the first day that I got it, and then a couple examples as I've been going, and I'll do some live examples here for the video for you guys. I'll try to zoom in so that you can see. Alright, so we'll start off right here with these pretty nasty welds here. This was from the first day that I bought the welder. I was just trying to see how it works. So you can see that they're pretty nasty. But as I continued with practice and whatnot, I started to get more welds along these lines. And then this one. These look much, much better. Obviously not professionally done, but I'd love to hear any feedback that you have on if these look like decent welds. But I'll turn it over onto this side, see the rust and whatnot, and weld directly onto this so that you can get an idea about the thing. It's a thicker piece, so I've got the setting on the welder as on max, and the wire speed is a little bit over 5. Just for these practices, if you run it too fast or too slow, it tends to give issues. If it's too slow, your weld is really spotty. It's where the wire doesn't feed fast enough to keep a constant connection to the metal. So I've got this just over 5, and that seems to be a decent speed for this 030 wire. And yeah, let's run a little bit so that you can see what it looks like here live. And again, I'll mention I've got it clamped, and on the 90 amp welders, as far as I understand, you could touch the wire to them and they would try to weld, they would spark. But you can see on this one, I touch the wire to it, nothing happens until I pull the trigger. And here we go. Alright, so I'll show you the finished product before I clean it off. But that's the fresh weld. You see all the discoloration from the flux. So that's it. Tons of those little BBs all over the place. So let me take the wire brush real quick. Clean that off. This is the Harbor Freight wire brush. I will be replacing this as these things wear out. You see that residue comes right off from the flux. And there it is. my hand slipped a couple times. I'm out here in my carport and squatted down to do these welds. And you can see a couple spots where I ran off and had to reset. But overall, much better than the stuff that I was doing originally. Let me see if I can find that again. Yeah, these, not the best. So this is definitely a difference. Just a little bit closer of that weld that I just did. Like I mentioned earlier, I've only been welding for about as long as I've had this Harbor Freight welder. And for me, I think that I've come a long way just in the past month from never having welded to where I'm at today, which isn't the best, but the welds are pretty decent from what I've seen in comparison photos and watching videos and things. So I mentioned that this welder does not have any of the modifications that some have, like people on YouTube mentioned the capacitor and the bridge rectifier to convert it from AC to DC. So this is still stock. The only thing different is the Lincoln wire that I just got today. But I really don't notice a big difference between the Harbor Freight wire and the Lincoln wire, especially if you're looking at the spatter. It's pretty much the same amount. The BBs get stuck to whatever you're welding. So not a huge difference there from the wire. So a lot of people say throw away the Harbor Freight wire, and I would disagree with that. I would say use it for practice or use it for regular use. I've made a couple things with it so far that have held pretty strong. So I don't have any negative feedback on that Harbor Freight wire, but